Mr. President.
Senator from Nevada is recognized.
Mr. President, the American people are tired. They are tired of the government spending money that it doesn't have while they are forced to make tough decisions about their own families' budgets. But more importantly, the American people are tired of the government stepping in, blank check in hand, to bail out giant Wall Street firms that were irresponsible with their money. The American people are sick and tired of seeing their hard-earned taxpayer dollars squandered away in the name of too big to fail. One of the most important lessons that we learned from this financial crisis, hopefully we learned, is that the bailouts were unfair. They allowed the government to manipulate the market by picking winners and losers, and they used taxpayer dollars to do so. Republicans have made this point repeatedly during this debate. Those on the other side of the aisle have accused us of trying to hold up reform. But what we have been trying to do is to listen to the American people when they demand no more bailouts. This bill does not address the concerns of the American people. Despite the enormous size of this bill and its complexity, and believe me, it is truly complex. And I don't believe anybody in this chamber, and as a matter of fact, I don't believe anybody on Capitol Hill fully understands this bill. But this bill makes more explicit the ability of the government to continue to pick winners and losers when bailing out irresponsible Wall Street firms. So, Mr. President, I come from a state where gambling is a big part of our economy. And yet a Las Vegas casino could not get away with half of the gambling that Wall Street does. When people walk into a casino to gamble, they do so knowing that the odds are against them. But Wall Street takes gambling to a whole new level. And they do it because they actually manipulate the odds while somebody's playing the game. What's more, Wall Street then asks the government to cover their bets when they could no longer afford to do so on their own. So can you imagine a casino booking a bad bet, losing money, and then asking the government to bail them out? That's basically what Wall Street did. And this bill continues that ability. The proof of this is self-evident because we are now debating an amendment that tries to fix that. It's the Boxer Amendment. If this bill did what it claimed to do, we wouldn't be here debating this amendment, which, although this amendment sounds very nice, it actually does very little to address the problem of preventing future bailouts. This bill still creates a new government bureaucracy for the purpose of managing bailed out banks and their creditors. The language of this amendment does nothing to prevent taxpayer money from being used to pay off debts of failed financial institutions. For example, billions of dollars in taxpayer money were used to pay AIG's obligations to Goldman Sachs after the insurance giant's collapse. This amendment does nothing to stop the Federal Reserve from risking even more taxpayer money on these firms again in the future. The language of this amendment does not even prevent the government from imposing fees on companies that can be spent to bail out firms. I regret that this flawed bill is on the floor now instead of a bipartisan piece of legislation that the American people have been asking for and, quite frankly, deserve. I hope in the process of debating this bill that we can offer amendments that will fix this bill, that will finally end this too big to fail concept. But instead, the American people are left dealing with the reality that another partisan bill has come to the floor and will probably become law. And another government bureaucracy will be created as a result of this legislation with little regard to the will of the American people. Mr. President, here we go again. Unfortunately, too much partisanship has gone on in this body. There are several of us working on bipartisan amendments, and I hope that we can actually dramatically improve this bill. I think both sides have the same objectives, and that is that we want to clean up Wall Street. We don't want to do that, though, while hurting Main Street. We want to hold Wall Street accountable, but we don't want to do it in a way that harms people who had nothing to do with the financial crisis that occurred. So, Mr. President, I hope we actually can end up with a system that ends too big to fail. We already have several financial institutions in this country that are already too big to fail. What to do about those firms is very difficult, very complex, and we have to do it in a way that doesn't mess up our entire financial system and system of credit that we have in the United States. So I believe we need to take our time, because the expertise to get this right is very difficult to get, and I don't believe that necessarily the Senate, the House, has that kind of expertise. So we need to take our time on this bill to get it right, to make sure that we are doing what we are intending to do. Mr. President, I yield the floor.